everybody. Welcome to today's VC workshop on business travel guidance. My name is Ashley Jones. I'm the Managing Director of Community Programs here at the Venture Center. We have some amazing speakers with us today to talk about this specific topic as it relates to up-to-date guidance to keep your employees safe, latest travel insights and metrics, and even safety measures when it comes to corporate housing. For our speakers today, we have Regina Young, who's a partner with Wright, Lindsey, Jennings, Margaret Kemp, who is the CEO of Poe Travel, and Cathy Tuggle, who's the owner and principal of Apartment Hunters. So we'll hear from them in just a moment, but first I've got to do my commercials, so bear with us. Want to thank our sponsors, of course, Simmons Bank, Wright, Lindsey, Jennings, Frost Accounting Firm, and of course the Little Rock Regional Chamber for all of the support they give the Venture Center and helping us promote these events and reach our entrepreneurs. Thanks to all of them. And also wanted to mention a few upcoming programs that we've got. We put on several different programs that are free and open to the public throughout the year. One that's coming up on February 26th is VC Health. It's a mental health toolkit for employers. This is a new series that we started in January, 12-part series focused on entrepreneurship and mental health. And so every month is a different topic as it relates to that. And so this one that you'll hear on Friday is resources and tools and things you need to know to approach conversations with employees and maybe colleagues in the workplace. And so that'll be a really important discussion this Friday. You can register for that on our website, Facebook page, through our newsletter. Also on March 5th, we've got a lunch and learn with a company called Suchi. And that's all about, it's in the fintech space and college savings with the 529 plans. So they'll talk about that and why that's important. As well as on March 12th, we've got a VC workshop on taxes. Fun topic. So 2020 taxes, how all the legislation from the CARES Act and PPP will affect doing taxes this year. You might have some questions for that. Again, March 12th, all of these programs are from noon to 1. So like I said, we encourage you to register for those and attend and ask your questions. Today, we do want this to be an interactive session. So if you have a question, you can pop that into the chat box. You can also unmute yourself and ask your question at any time. So feel free to do that. And then we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. I'd like for each of you to take a moment and give a little bit more introduction on yourself. And we'll go ahead and start with Regina.
Okay, hi. Regina Young, and I'm an attorney at Wright, Lindsey, and Jennings here in our Little Rock office. I primarily practice employment law, and I'm usually defending companies, employers who have been sued for wrongful termination or discrimination by former employees. Today, I'm going to speak for a few minutes about travel policies post-COVID. And I became interested in this after I was sent home last March, and became really interested in remote work and just how that impacted employees and policies regarding remote work. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today.
Thanks, Regina. Margaret?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Ashley and the Venture Center, for having me here. We always love the opportunity to talk about travel. I kind of began my career in travel in 1984. I retired from another kind of position in another even arena. But Fred and Tina Poe, who I had the privilege of working with, said, come and try it. You might like it and see what it's like. I had no idea what all was involved really in the travel. And at the time they were in a small office and they were known around the world really for international travel. So imagine, we worked from 9:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. There were no, we worked by telexes. There were no faxes or emails. So the whole pace of the business back then was so different than it is now. Then I managed for 10 years our Fifth Army account, which we had 5 branches before I got back into the international world. So it's been great and I love it. It's changed my life in so many ways, and contacts around the world and experiences with my family. So so glad I got into this crazy world we're living in.
Thanks, Margaret. Cathy?
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Cathy Tuggle, and I am the owner and principal broker of Apartment Hunters and Arkansas Suites. We help people find apartments, rental homes, duplexes, condos, corporate suites, anything that you can live in. And we've been in business for 21 years, and I've been in the industry for 30 years. And I am so blessed to be here today with such great people. So thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thank you all for introducing yourself. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. The way we'll do this is I'll first ask Regina to take several minutes to talk about the legal and guidance aspect of it. And then we'll go to Margaret, who will discuss the industry trends within travel. And then obviously Cathy to talk about the corporate housing. So Regina, I do want to start with you and go ahead and talk about those regulations and policies that are in place for corporate and personal travel.
Okay, sure. So pre-COVID, as a litigation attorney, I spent a lot of my time outside of the office, traveling in Arkansas, going to my clients' places of business, and also outside of Arkansas occasionally, depending on the case. And like everything else, litigation came to a grinding halt last March as well. And most courts still are not having in-person court hearing, and trials have been suspended still. So I had a lot of downtime to think about things other than the next deadline on my heavy trial calendar. And it got, like I said earlier, got me thinking about practicing law remotely, and about other employees and remote work and telework. And then later on in the year, after having been cooped up at home with my two 13-year-old sons as they do virtual school, my husband and I started thinking about traveling. And so my thoughts then turned towards the end of the year about travel workplace policies. And I ended up writing a couple of articles last year about that. But today what I want to talk about are first employee personal travel, and then business travel policies and considerations. As far as personal travel, my thoughts turned to this when we started planning that trip, and I knew I needed to tell my managing partner, hey, I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks in December, but I plan on practicing, it'll be like a working vacation. And that got me thinking, well, I wonder if it's legal for employers to require that their employees get pre-approval or require them to report travel. Is that legal? Is that something that an employer can do? And what I found out is that generally the answer is yes. Employers can require a pre-travel inquiry of their employees, but it should be limited. First of all, it should be limited to international and out-of-state travel only, and the length of time. Personal questions regarding your employees' travel obviously needs to be avoided for several reasons. You just don't want to get into your employees' personal business, as that can lead to problem areas later on. So as long as you limit the inquiry to international and out of state and length of time travel, I think you'll be fine. Also, if you're going to have a pre-travel inquiry policy, it needs to be across all levels of employees. You don't need to just limit it to certain employees. It needs to be across the board with everybody. And that, of course, is going to help you avoid any claims of unfair treatment or unfair application or discrimination. And obviously, since the whole purpose of a inquiry such as this is to keep your employees back at the office safe, you don't need to require your remote workers to report any personal travel. I mean, if they are exclusively working remote, there's no need for your company to inquire about that. If you do decide that you want to have a personal travel policy, As part of that policy, you need to include language about what happens upon their return. Are your employees going to be required to quarantine for a certain period of time? And if so, how is that going to be handled? Is it going to be with pay? Will it, for the employees who can continue to work remotely while they're quarantined after travel? Those issues need to be discussed and hammered out ahead of time. And so after you decide if you want to do a personal pre-travel inquiry, I guess the next consideration that a business would want to undertake is, about business travel, and are you ready for a return to business travel? And at the outset, I think employers are going to have to consider whether business travel is essential to company operations. I think you're going to have some employees who are just chomping at the bit and ready to get back into business travel. And those aren't going to be your problem employees. I think where the issues are going to come up as far as a return to business travel is for those employees who traveled pre-COVID, but have been working remotely, and they haven't been traveling in the last year. And from their perspective, everything is working out great. They are able to do their job, and they think that they're doing their job effectively. And I'm not here to tell you whether or not it's appropriate for your business to return to travel. That's something that your company has to consider for yourself. But for those employees who are reticent about returning to travel, you need to be prepared to address their concerns about a return to travel. You also need to be prepared to address the fact that travel was an essential function of their job pre-COVID. And, I think as far as those employees who may be reluctant to return to business travel, I know that there are a lot of studies that you can point to that talk about the return of investment to your company for every dollar spent on travel, and just the return on investment that you get. And I'm sure your company has anecdotal information about that, and you probably already have studies showing how travel is essential to your business. But I do think that you need to be prepared to address those issues with employees. I also think, we get a lot of tacit knowledge from traveling for work. I know that I can talk to my clients over the phone, but it's not until I show up at their business where a light bulb kind of goes off. And so if you're talking to your employees about returning to business travel, I think, using that as an explanation, hey, there's a lot to be gained here by getting back into business travel. Obviously, safety in a COVID world is going to need to be your company's top priority when you're talking about your employees returning to travel. And you need to have a travel plan, a business travel plan in place. I think probably a good way to go about that is to have maybe a workplace travel coordinator, someone in your HR department, maybe your HR director, whoever your employees are reporting to about the personal travel. But my recommendation would be to have a workplace travel coordinator in place so that all travel that is going on within your company is being handled by one or two people. And the workplace travel coordinator can, put plans in place such as pre-travel and post-travel COVID testing, make sure that your employees have plenty of face masks and hand sanitizer, and can research the travel ahead of time to make sure that the business travel is as safe as possible. Obviously, companies need to be keeping up with the CDC guidelines as far as how to keep workplaces safe. And I know that I was on the CDC website yesterday, and they do have guidelines about traveling, workplace travel. And so your workplace coordinator would need to be up to date on the CDC guidelines. In addition to, and once you get this started, if you haven't returned to travel yet, it's going to be a little tedious, and it's going to take some time to work through at first. But I think after your employees start traveling a little bit and getting used to it, it just goes on autopilot. And, as tedious as this sounds now, I think that it obviously will get a bit easier. But in addition to pre-travel discussions, I think that a post-travel debriefing would be a good idea. And again, this would be with your workplace travel coordinator. You can talk about problem areas, how the travel went, whether the hotel was following CDC guidelines, and just get an idea that will help guide future business travel for your company. Also, you'll talk about in this debriefing whether your employee feels like some quarantine post-business travel is necessary, and whether that can be by remote, and how long, and issues regarding that. Again, the top priority when you talk about a return to business travel is always going to be employee safety. And this is going to be particularly important when you're talking about older workers and those people at risk for severe illness if they catch COVID. And so you need to be very careful about returning those employees to work at this point. You might incentivize vaccinations. That might be one way to help get your employees back traveling again. But you really have to weigh whether your more fragile workers, whether it's worth the risk for those workers to return to travel. I think that larger companies, it's going to be easier to absorb this risk because you have more resources and maybe more employees who can travel, who might not have in the past, but who can travel for the company, while older workers or at-risk workers continue to sideline travel until things start returning to normal. The real issue is going to be the smaller companies. And I have been working with a smaller company, and they have a situation where they had an older employee, and she was it. She did all of their travel pre-COVID. She was required to have so many client meetings per week, and she traveled throughout the state. And when things started opening up again, it became a problem for her because of her age and some underlying health issues. And so that particular employee had to be put on leave, had to take leave. And now that that leave has expired, we're having to work through those issues because the employee and the employer are still not comfortable with her returning to travel. But in eventually, the company has to get back to doing what it was doing pre-COVID. And there may be situations where you have an employee who may not be able to continue working, after you exhaust all of the accommodations that can be done. And you just have to be very careful. You have to keep open lines of communication, exhaust the leave of absences, because you just want to avoid those types of discrimination claims, and that can be tricky. So I guess one last issue, and it's not a particularly important issue, but early on in the pandemic, our governor revised the workers' compensation laws to allow a COVID claim if a worker can prove that he or she was infected with COVID at work. And it's a little bit more complicated than that. And because most companies and employers have workers' comp insurance, the workers' comp carrier handles that. But I did want you all to be aware of that there is an avenue now for employees to file a workers' comp claim if they can prove that they were infected with COVID at work. And obviously that would be difficult. But anyhow, that's all I have right now, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Regina, and thanks for that overview. I think you covered a lot of the questions that some of our viewers had, and I do want to go ahead and open it up to some questions. If you do have one, feel free to unmute yourself, ask it, or use the chat box to ask your question. We'll give a few seconds for anyone to chime in. In your example, Regina, that you gave of the employer and the employee not feeling comfortable to begin travel again, would there ever be a position where the employer asks the employee to take the vaccine, and whether or not the employee refuses or takes it? I mean, what are the impacts as far as that's concerned?
Right. So that happened in the situation, and the employee in this situation had problems with getting vaccinations in the past, and was not comfortable getting the vaccines that were available to her. Apparently, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is showing less bad reactions than the other vaccines. And so they're kind of holding off until she can get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But yeah, I mean, that was a discussion that they had. And so, I haven't talked to the client in a few weeks, but it doesn't just go away, these types of issues. It really is a back and forth discussion between the employer and the employee. And this also reminds me that employers need to be very careful to document these discussions. Document the fact that travel was an essential function of that employee's job pre-COVID. And that's what we had in this case. I mean, there was lots of documentation. It was in her job description. It was in employee reviews that she had to travel to this many places every week. And so that was well documented. But you also need to be careful to document the discussions after the fact, and what you are doing to accommodate your employee. And this will go a long way to help defending these types of claims. So should you get in this situation, but of course we're in a very unique time here, and not only do you want to protect all of your employees, and so I really can't emphasize enough about how careful you need to be and the policies you need to have in place to demonstrate that you are doing everything you can to keep your employees safe at this time.
That's a fantastic point to make. And Mimi went ahead and dropped your information in the chat if anybody wants to reach out. And there was an additional question. You mentioned the workers' comp. Where can people go to find more information on that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I went next door to my law partner, Lee Muldrow, and that's what he does. And so he was the one who told me about the governor's order allowing these a workers' comp claim for COVID. So I guess I would start there. I would just start with a Google search about the governor's executive orders, or to your attorney if you have concerns about workers' comp claims for COVID.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. We'll leave it open for questions towards the end if we have time, but thanks, Regina, for giving an overview on that. That's extremely helpful. And as she mentioned, the documentation side of that is extremely important. And so be sure to have that in place. I want to go ahead and move over to Margaret to talk about the trends in the industry and your experience in the future of travel as the CEO of Poe Travel. I know you've got some industry expertise, so I'd love to get your thoughts behind all of this.
Of course. Thanks so much, Ashley. You know, it goes without saying that COVID-19 was like nothing we've ever really experienced before. In my 35 years of business here, you know, we've survived zero commissions from the airlines, the 9/11 attacks, Desert Storm, SARS, swine flu, economic crisis, you know, but again, COVID-19 brought our entire industry to a standstill. You know, never before have we ever seen every border in the world closed. So quite confusing, challenging every day. Even yesterday, we had calls for people after the Australian Open wanting to go, can I go in 2022? Or maybe I want to go to Canada. You know, Canada is completely closed to Americans unless it's essential travel. And Mexico, our southern border, is open. And so a lot of people have been traveling there, but it's been a very unique situation in the fact that the world is closed to us. You know, golly, you've got the quarantine situation of knowing what this is all going to look like. I mean, it's different around the country. It's different even from state to state. We've run into some issues in New York in the fact that in certain hotel areas that you have to quarantine for 3 days when you arrive. You have to have a negative COVID test to even go. Then when you, on the 4th day, the hotel provides you with a COVID test. If it's negative, then you can move around the city. California, it's totally different. Florida even, you know, there's really no parameters there. So Maine, the East Coast, West Coast, everybody's different. So it's kind of crazy to kind of keep up with all that. As an overall impact, I wanted to mention the fact that the World Travel and Tourism Council has showed our job loss in the industry somewhere in the neighborhood of 98 million. The economic loss has been estimated to $2,686 billion. So where people are wanting to get back to normal sooner than later, it's going to take months, many, many months, if not years. So we're looking at already, how is the fact that we're going to recover from the airline sector to the hotel sector, rail sector, worldwide. So the expectations that we have from the travel experience is really going to change. Airlines are not only dealing with the 777 issue and the 737 MAX relaunch, flight reductions, but the new COVID protocols. American Airlines came out yesterday with the fact that a negative test in certain areas for international, masks are obviously mandatory. You have a fine if you don't wear your mask. They have the opportunity to take you off if you're not wearing a mask. Hotel services are challenged in a way of having to secure safety areas. The reception areas are kind of cleaned more than the other areas of the hotel, or more frequently. Hotels are still operating at 50% occupancy. And so the service levels of all characters of hotels, from luxury to moderate, is quite different. And as we know, and maybe some of you've seen with the cruise industry, they've not been in the water since this started happening, and waiting again on the CDC to approve their protocols. But Canada, our neighbor above us, has now closed the waters for cruise ships through February of 2022. So again, they've lost last season and they'll lose this season. The cruise lines that are able to open on the East Coast and the West Coast, there's a couple of companies because they only have 100 passengers. So that's kind of the measuring stick for cruise lines right now until we get further in. They're anticipating most likely, we're selling 22, 23, and waiting again to see what 21 will look like. Again, back to the airlines, with all of their adapting of new guidelines, flying is becoming much safer. Some airlines have guaranteed that their employees and staff, from the stewards to the airport agents to the pilots, will be 100% vaccinated. Right now, we have in certain airports in the country that they will provide the testing there in the airport. So, but no airline wants to necessarily be the gorilla in the room to say, I can't let you board without a negative COVID test. What is that going to look like? Cruise lines as well. But obviously the exposure is quite great. I know, golly, with the conferences heading online and business travel market has come to a complete halt, we've all kind of learned to communicate without jumping on a plane. The shutdown of business travel has had a huge commercial implication for airlines, for whom business travelers make up 12% of the passengers, but they produce 75% of the profits. So understandably, the industry is keen for things to get back to normal as quickly as possible. Industry surveys has found that nearly half expected domestic travel to begin to resume in the United States by the fall, but we'll have to wait and see, because this depends on what happens. And we know that while there's hesitation to return to the office after COVID-related shutdowns, there's also reluctance to hop on a plane for conference or in-person meetings. This is due large in part to the clear advantage of conducting business interactions face-to-face. It's well known that there are various benefits communicating in person, and we even agree that a simple handshake is more crucial in forging a bond with someone versus just the Zoom. In Europe, we are already seeing evidence of people switching from planes to trains for journeys, especially when their sleeper cabins offer privacy. However, in the United States, there's been a lukewarm return to air travel, with the industry now expecting to kind of be 2024 before we really get to the pre-COVID-19, levels. We've looked into a study from Oxford Economics that found that $12.50 of additional revenue is generated for every $1 spent in business travel. So, I mean, we see where the airlines, which have reduced all their schedules tremendously, are really anxious to get business people traveling again. And again, back to the hotels and testing, if you're traveling outside the United States to Mexico, we are finding that chains like Four Seasons and Rosewood, Marriott are offering on-site testing, especially coming from Mexico, or there are Egypt, Turkey you can travel to, that Americans will have to have a 72-hour negative COVID test before entering into the United States. They all have different taglines to ensure that the customer will feel safe. They're still operating at 50% occupancy, but they're all using the latest tools and technology, including electrostatic spraying, ozone technology for air purification, and the UV technology for HVAC systems. Hotels have also now created a hygiene officer, which is focused on implementation within their hotel. Public areas are cleaned, as I said, hourly with extra attention to the reception area and lobbies. Restaurants and bars operating at the hotels are mostly for the guests only, and they're still at a reduced capacity. Room service, I mean, if you don't care to eat in the restaurant, there is a contactless in-room dining, so makes it easier to distance. And again, you can already check in online well in advance, so you eliminate the time at a front desk within close proximity to somebody else. You know, with all of these changes from hotels and planes, especially moving people and border control closing, we're still very hopeful about the future of travel. And as we've seen so much more increase just in this week alone. Gosh, Lord knows here in Arkansas, we're tired of the snow and tired of the Zoom fatigue that we have, but where in the world are we able to travel? We know, and how this will start, people want to travel closer to home. That's going to be the segment of the market that will return first. And as to no surprise, the focus is on family travel and wellness. There's been a return to the great American road trip to the West, and we are seeing high demands for the national parks, especially Yellowstone and Glacier. PoTravel has been a member of Virtuoso Travel for over 21 years. Being part of Virtuoso, we are part of a larger community that offers incredible connections with preferred partner relationship. We believe as your travel advisor, it is up to us to calm the digital clutter that you experience on a daily basis. What we bring is years of experience, knowledge, and connections that the average person can never amass on their own. Our collective reputation of 61 years is constantly leveraged for our clients' benefits. Air consolidators, rail, we're in the elite group of hoteliers of Four Seasons, Rosewood, Belmont, and part of the Abercrombie and Kent Club 100. These contacts around the world provide great benefits to our client and ultimately saving you time and money as we focus on value and excellence. Someone you can trust guiding your decisions and travel experiences that create lasting memories. But I guess in the long run, we're thinking of where in the world can we go today? And it's amazing that some borders are open to us. The Dominican Republic, Antigua, Jamaica, Turkey, Egypt, Mexico, Aruba, Tanzania, Kenya, yet this changes, I would not say on an hourly basis, but every day. This morning, talking to our contacts in Germany, which, you know, is an incredible economy, but they've been in lockdown now for many months, and that will continue until next week. Who knows if Oktoberfest will open and be available for gathering. So, I mean, every day in our world is a new day. I mean, come to work and see what else has happened over the night. We believe in travel. It unites and celebrates cultures. It supports local economies. It protects environments. And most importantly, it feeds our souls and enriches our life. So I'll end the note on the fact that we're very hopeful for our future. It's amazing that we've been through this for over a year when COVID started and how it just enveloped the entire world. So we're definitely looking forward to better days in 21 and beyond.
Absolutely, Margaret. I know there are several people on this call that are looking forward to the day where they can travel out of country and go to places that are on their bucket list and see new sites. It was pretty shocking, the statistic. I think you said 2024 is what we're looking at to get back to pre-COVID levels. You know, it relates to economic activity. I do want to go ahead and open it up for questions if anyone does have a question. I had a question. So I imagine personal travel is just going to skyrocket, you know, almost immediately. And we've probably already seen that. But when it comes to the corporate travel, will that one be a slower incline, and do you see it actually getting back to pre-COVID levels?
Eventually it will get back to pre-COVID levels. I mean, we've all have Zoomed, even in our world, in making our dealings, and we see it from during this COVID period. We work with Riceland Foods and some other companies that are deemed essential travel, and they were allowed to go to Europe and the Caribbean at the time when it was closed. It took a lot of connections to do that. So I think until the airlines make it very simple, I mean, we have less lift and less aircraft flying for sure, and they're anxious to get their planes on. The airlines are creating this vaccine pass that will be digital, that you're going to have in order to travel internationally outside our borders, be it Canada and Mexico. But we're thinking that 22 for sure, we're going to be better at moving people and have more flexibility. But 24 really is the getting back, the level of travel for the last 5 years was off the chart. So it's going to be a slow return for sure for corporate travel.
Absolutely. And I wanted to also mention this one just for your insight. I read an article a couple of months ago. It was talking about the resurgence of motels. And believe it or not, people are choosing motels over hotels because there's one office with usually one person that you go to, and then you have from the outside to get into your room, one door to access, no elevators. So it's a little more COVID friendly than say a hotel. Sure. Just from your experience, have you seen that where people are requesting motels over hotels?
Not really. I mean, we've had a few people on drive trips and plan it out and and that perfectly makes sense. But, Marriott, which kind of owns the hotel world, they purchased everybody from Sheraton to Ritz to Luxury Collection to their Marriott Courtyards, Hampton Inns and such like that. I mean, they're working really diligently of making the check-in contactless and your room being serviced and providing the services, because it's huge business. So, I mean, they'll get to that, but it's just more and more people travel and feel comfortable and safe, which starts with getting there, be it a car or an airline. It'll all kind of evolve.
Maybe they'll bring the triptych back from AAA. For those who remember, for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Margaret, and thanks for those insights when it comes to travel. Good to know that, we're only a few years away from some form of normalcy. Do want to go ahead and move over to Cathy to talk a little bit about those corporate housing trends, your experience in this business, and the future of corporate and personal travel.
Yeah, and I wanted to give a little bit of background on what we do. We are a corporate housing and relocation service. So if someone is relocating to Little Rock and they're looking for a rental property, and we also work with people that are here locally, we would put them in our company vehicle and we would drive them to the rental properties, and we'd show them all the different properties. But we would also take them to see the beautiful city of Little Rock in the metropolitan area. And we would show them the schools, the entertainment, we would show them shopping, and try to get them acclimated to the city so that they know that where they want to live. And by the end of the day, they loved Little Rock and they were hooked. And so when COVID happened, guess what? We couldn't put them in the car with us. And so that really changed a lot. So mid-March, we closed our doors, we locked them up, and every single apartment community locked their doors. Now, we were all available for assistance, but we were not, seeing people until we kind of knew what was going on. So here we have a lot of clientele in our pipeline that want to move here. And again, we work with a lot of people relocating, and, in Little Rock, the medical profession is one of our major employers. And so we had a lot of people that needed to get to Little Rock. Unfortunately, because of travel restrictions, they couldn't get here. And so here we were in the month of March, And we were contacting these people that are in our pipeline, and they were delaying their move to Little Rock. And so, but they were still moving here. And thankfully, you know, we had a lot of people that ended up moving, mainly like in the month of June and July. But we had to give them some information. We had to get very creative on how we can help them find a place to live, because they couldn't go inside the apartments. They couldn't come to Little Rock, or they couldn't go inside the homes. And so what we did is we have a really great database, and this database, we've always used it, but it's been more like a CRM rather than a really, you know, necessary tool. And so we were so fortunate that we had videos of every single floor plan to all the properties that we worked with. And so we were able to help our clientele select apartments and rental properties by that method. And that was like our saving grace. But, you know, we also had individual properties that we work with as well. And so these individual owners were in desperate need of getting renters into those properties. And some of the safety measures that we took, we didn't drive them around in our vehicle. We would meet them at the property, you know, when the standards got a little bit more flexible. And we would meet them at the property, and we would give them the opportunity to enter the property without us going into the property with them. And of course, we had our masks, and we were social distancing, and we would open the property so that they could go in and look at the property and feel safe and not have to worry about someone else being there. But we also gave them the opportunity that we could, you know, step inside the property with them and be there to answer any questions that they may have. So, and then when the guidelines were getting a little bit more, I guess, lenient at the apartment communities, now the apartments still to this day, I'd say 95% of them still have their doors locked, and we do too. So we don't really allow anybody to come in off the street, and neither does the apartment communities. So we have to make arrangements for our clients to go to the property and to make an appointment so that they would have a safe tour. And so, you know, we were very adamant about making sure that they were very safe during the whole time frame of all of this. And I will say the apartment communities did very well throughout the summertime. I think a lot of people didn't really want to move because of COVID. So occupancy rates did stay pretty high, but we did see an increase in rental homes. There were so many people that wanted rental homes because you had talked earlier about the motels, you know, being popular. The rental homes, you're not around a lot of people. So a lot of people, you know, requested rental homes over apartments. Unfortunately, the real estate industry was so phenomenal, and people were selling all of those homes, all these great real estate agents in Little Rock, that we had a very limited amount of rental homes out there. But, you know, again, apartment communities, occupancy rates did fare very well, and which is good for the city of Little Rock and our community and economic development. But in the future, I do feel that we probably will see more virtual leasing. We actually, before COVID happened, because we were creating a database of videos and detailed information and property profiles, we kind of already saw that coming. I mean, we kind of figured, I mean, people that we work with that are relocating from out of state, people are busy. I mean, if you're living in Chicago and you're moving to the Little Rock area, I mean, gosh, you're busy, and it's kind of difficult to get on a plane and to fly to Little Rock and to spend a day looking for something because you're, you know, working and you have a family and so forth. So we kind of saw that going, and we were already working with people that were in that situation. But COVID, of course, really created that situation. And we probably rented probably 65% of our clientele within that time frame on a virtual basis. And so again, it was a very safe way to lease. But I really do feel that we will start seeing more virtual leasing. And some of the apartment communities themselves, and still right now, even though some are doing like appointment only, there's a couple of properties that only do virtual, period. That's it. They will not open their doors. They will not allow their prospective residents to go through the property. And then there's some communities that are doing self-guided tours. And what they do is they'll have like a lockbox on the door and allow people to check out or get a code, and they'll go and look at the property. I honestly am a very hands-on kind of person and very personalized. And I hope, you know, I don't like the guided tour or the self-guided tours, because there's not someone there to answer your questions and to overcome objections. And so I really, you know, that probably will stay around, but I just don't think it's as personalized. But I do feel that our company will be doing even better in the future because we do all the legwork. And so anybody that is doing or wanting virtual, we got it all. We can do every bit of it. And there's been times we were doing FaceTime videos with our clients too. So if somebody was moving from Dallas and they couldn't get here, and the property would allow us to do like an appointment, we would go into the property or the apartment and we would do a video of or FaceTime of that apartment, and they could see their actual apartment home that they're moving into. And so I really do think it'll help us. But I do want to end saying that we are so lucky to have businesses here in the Little Rock area. In the midst of all this pandemic, we have a lot of great announcements with Amazon. And I remember in March when we were very, very slow, and I was worried because a lot of people weren't relocating until June. I was receiving calls for the Amazon, announcement, and we obtained a lot of business from it. And I called because Jay Cheshire with the Little Rock Regional Chamber, he was part of making that happen. And I called him and I thanked him from the bottom of my heart, because that I didn't know what the direction was going to be with my business. I honestly had no idea. I was worried about my employees because I am a small business owner, but I was so grateful for that announcement. And I know that everybody that's on this call probably benefited from it as well, and so did the whole city. We have some great leadership here in the Little Rock area, and I so blessed that we live and work here in the Little Rock area. So I just want to say that. And I also want to say that the Chamber has always been part of the economic development, and my company has benefited from it since 1999. So thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thanks so much, Cathy. That is an interesting perspective to hear about the apartment side of it and people relocating and looking for housing. We do have a few minutes if anyone has a question for any of our three speakers today. I was interested, you were talking about the rental houses. There was a huge demand for rental houses. Did you see the supply actually match that, or was there a shortage of houses on the market for rent?
There was a shortage of houses for rent. In some cases, in the past, a lot of owners would resort to renting their home out because they couldn't sell it. But now there's no inventory on the market to sell. So those people that did resort to renting it, put it on the market to sell. I can't tell you how many rental homes that we've worked in the past decided to sell. So it was very limited on any type of rental homes. I mean, when we would get a rental home, it was gone in a heartbeat. I mean, just immediately. And we've got a huge pipeline of people that do want rental homes right now, but they're just scarce. They're very, very scarce right now.
Got it. Does anybody have any final questions, comments, thoughts, commentary they'd like to to put out there before we wrap up?
I do want to say also that I love the Venture Center. They have given me some great business too, and I appreciate y'all. Y'all are dear friends of mine, and we are so blessed to have you in the Little Rock area too. There's a lot of great companies that have relocated to Little Rock because of those people. So thank y'all.
Well, thank you,
for
Cathy.
your, everything that you do for us. And we have been missing our FinTech people coming to town. The economic impact of our FinTech program is $1 million something for our city because they spent 12 weeks here. And housed by Cathy, probably some travel from Poe Travel. And so we have been
Legal help from Wright, Lindsey, Jennings.
That's right. So all that stuff we have really been, missing. And they are really, what's interesting about it too, so everybody knows, is when we get on the Zoom call with these FinTech founders from around the world, they are dying to come back to, to come to Little Rock. So we are, in the midst of planning on trying to do something big that I'm sure I'm going to call you, Cathy, and you, Margaret, soon about this event that we're planning for 2022.
Perfect.
Yeah, stay tuned for more information on that. I do want to thank all of our speakers today for providing this information and commentary on this topic. It's very useful information. I hope it was valuable to those that attended today. So thank you to Regina and Margaret and Cathy for attending today. Want to wrap up by thanking our sponsors once again: Simmons Bank, Wright, Lindsey, Jennings, Frost Accounting Firm, and of course the Little Rock Regional Chamber. We hope to see you all again at one of our future programs, one of which is this Friday, VC Health. Attend any program you find interesting. We hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Woo-hoo.
All right.